By the young professor, the best dressed host in all of sports, the loudest of the bunch, the man with the spectacular vernacular, but that's not who I am today. The professor is a character that I've created who's pretty close to me as an actual person, just a little flashier and with a name that's a little easier to remember for other people. On a weekly basis, he stands in front of tens of thousands of people on the biggest stages with the brightest spotlights, and he makes it look pretty easy, but he wasn't prepared to talk today. Today's stakes are a little bit higher, pressure is a little bit greater, and it's a job that just wasn't a job that he's designed to handle. So instead, you get me. I'm Matt Graifer, the oldest son of the man that we're here to honor the life of today. Bill Graifer. And I think I'm up for it, but bear with me if my poise is a little bit shaken at times. Bill was born on October 19th, 1960 in Union, New Jersey, and was the third of 5 children had by Lois and Seymour Graifer, my grandparents. All of this is before my time, obviously, but the general understanding that I have of my father as a kid was that he was a bit of a troublemaker and a very mediocre student. There are people in the room that think that can maybe validate that. Is that true? Aunt Fran, Uncle Mike? Ish, yeah. I was struggling to believe that because the version of him that raised my siblings and I didn't really show any signs of that, but I digress. When Bill graduated high school, he joined the United States Marine Corps and he served 4 years, most of which he spent stationed in Hawaii. This was a very transformative experience for him because the skills and the discipline that he learned in that time would erase his status as a troublemaker and a mediocre student. He became driven, focused, loyal, and constant. And those are the qualities that he would carry into the next stage of his life, which was fatherhood. He met my mother, Sharon, and the two married in October of 1985, before having me in March of 1986. And for those of you that are doing the math, that's not the way things are supposed to be done. But nevertheless, there they were. My parents moved into the downstairs 2-bedroom tiny apartment of the home where my mother was raised in Rahway, New Jersey to start their family. Our family grew in January of 1989 when my brother Jim was born and my sister Kate came along in November 1990. My parents were a simple couple with no real formal education between them, raising a fairly large family. My mom didn't work so that she could stay home and take care of us. So my father was the sole provider for us for many years. I don't know exactly what all of his jobs were in those early years, but he had multiple jobs. They were often concurrent all throughout that time. I do know that my father worked constantly. He was rarely home, but he did it consistently so that we could have everything that we need, and we did. In 1991, he had saved up enough for us to purchase our first home, which was a 100-year-old row home in Rahway, New Jersey. The place was in terrible condition when they bought it, and for the better part of a year, at least a year, my dad enlisted the help of his friends and his family, some of them that are here, to tear that house down to the studs and basically rebuild the entire place from the inside out. He did all of this while having 3 kids under the age of 6 and multiple jobs, and we moved in and spent the next 8 years or so in that house. You know, raising us and keeping the balance of things could not have been easy. And I know that now as a father of a large family myself. I think my siblings and I can agree that while there are certainly a number of fond memories from our early life when we grew up in New Jersey, my dad was definitely not our favorite parent at that time. He was not the fun-loving, brightly colored, silly guy that many of you might know from the APA circuit, or even in his earlier years when he was still a troublemaker and a mediocre student. Instead, he was a pretty serious disciplinarian who always wanted more from us and always had a project or work for us to do. As a little kid, that's not something that you appreciate very, very much. You want to be lazy. You want to have fun. You don't want to cut the grass. You don't want to take out the trash or break down all the recycling boxes and tie them up with twine. I think all 3 of us had a lot of resentment for him as little kids, which had to make his job all the more thankless. Here he was, just a guy out there breaking his ass every day, making it as a sole breadwinner, and all he wanted was to come home and in the precious little time that he would get to spend there and have things relatively neat and taken care of. Instead, we give him a hard time, clearly not favor him as the parent of choice in those years, but he never wavered in his approach, and he never complained about his status either. He remained consistent, and despite a lack of appreciation by us at the time, he always did so much to lay a good foundation for us. I think that I admire him the most for that phase. As a father myself now, I understand it in a way that my siblings and I were not able to when we were children. At home myself, I am not the loud, fun guy that you see on your TV screens. I come home and I want the dishwasher unloaded. I want the trash and the recycling taken out. I want my kids to come home with nothing but A's on their report cards, and I scold them constantly when they fight or they talk back or they step out of line. My kids fight me on all these things, and I also feel like it's a pretty thankless job a lot of the time. I've become a lot like him in some of those ways, which is ironic because, again, I didn't particularly like that version of him while I was experiencing it. But as I got older, I valued it. I valued it a lot. I recognized it for what it was later. It was his way of trying to help us build a foundation to be good and independent adults. And spoiler alert, it worked. It wasn't perfect, but all three of us turned out okay. So to my own kids that are here listening to this, I ask you to just trust the process because it does work. My parents had a fourth child in 1997, my brother Mark. Unfortunately, my mother's pregnancy with Mark was a difficult one, and she gave birth to him prematurely. My brother only lived for a day. It was one of the most difficult experiences of our lives, certainly as a family. I was 11 years old, and I remember the experience of those couple of days pretty well, and the fallout after. It was the first time that I saw a much more grounded and human side of my father. And it changed the way I looked at him for the better. I watched him weep. Weep in the hospital room as we waited for my mother to be brought back from surgery. And gone was that drill sergeant that I had perceived up to that point. Instead, I saw a loving man who just wanted his children to be safe and strong and prepared for life. Our lives as a family shifted. In some ways, we never really recovered from that experience. In other ways, in a cruel twist of fate, it allowed for us to grow into the versions of ourselves that are here today, which I think are mostly good. My dad continued to work and provide and stand by all of us for years to come. And my family all moved here to East Tennessee in the summer of 2007. And my father encountered many changes after moving to Tennessee, and not just the geographical ones that are obvious. He sold cars for most of our upbringing, and he continued to do so after moving here. I think there were times where he kind of enjoyed that part of his life, but mostly I remember him not enjoying it. When his marriage with my mom ended, he found himself at a crossroads. He started actively playing pool when he came to Tennessee as an APA member, and it was a passion he loved very much. He had shelved that passion for many years as he hustled and grinded to take care of his family. In fact, in the basement of our row home, that pool table that he has in his living room right now just sat as a table that's only purpose was to collect the mountains of junk that we had accumulated as a family. Some of you APA people might find that hard to believe, that that was not a part of his life at any one time, but it is true. However, now that he was a single man with grown children who didn't need to grind out of pure necessity for us anymore, he decided to take his passion for his recreational pursuit of playing pool and turn it into a professional one, scooping up the APA franchise here in East Tennessee and building it into something sustainable. Now, and don't get mad at me here, I personally don't share his passion for pool. In fact, I hated playing pool with him because I like to be reasonably good at the things I do and somewhat competitive, and he would just whoop my ass in pool, which was not fun. So not fun for me. However, I so admired his love for it, and I was so happy that he found something that spoke to his soul and gave him joy. I don't remember either of my parents doing much of anything fun while I was growing up. And now he had something that he was excited about and that he could levy into a real career for himself despite it being late in his life. He loved building that league so much. And to the many of you who are here today and knew him through that and that alone, I want to say thank you to all of you. He sometimes would tell me about the bickering between the teams and some of the drama and the nonsense that he would put up as a league operator. I don't know how that hits with some of you. Some of you probably have better insights than I do into what I'm talking about. But it certainly beat selling cars. He loved buying his custom wacky pool-inspired Hawaiian shirts. He loved taking his teams to Las Vegas and to Florida and treating them to dinner and making sure that all of you had nice awards and ceremonies and venues to play in. He liked driving to all of his venues late into the nights to pick up score sheets and just see how things were going. My understanding is that as of now, this league in a tourist area that started about 10 years ago with very little has grown into a league with more than 400 members. I heard someone say that in passing. That may or may not be the accurate stat, so forgive me if it isn't. But he was so proud of it and loved it all. And while I do not know many of you, again, I do say thank you, because you helped to give my father meaning, satisfaction, and personal joy in his life. And he was able to hold on to that even as he faced very difficult circumstances. So I will always be grateful to all of you who are here for that. When he was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer in his mid-50s, it was a harrowing diagnosis that none of us were really quite prepared for. He was very young to receive such a diagnosis, but he moved quickly to treat it and soldier on. He had surgeries and radiation and everything else, and none of it was fun, and he never complained. In fact, I think his cancer had emboldened him to live and love more loudly than ever before. He spent close to a decade living on essentially borrowed time, and he didn't take it for granted. He took the trips. He told us that he loved us constantly, words that we really had not heard from him spoken plainly when we were children. He forged new relationships. He met and married Chris, who became such a blessing in his life. She shared so many of his silly interests and pursuits and went all in with him on all of them. And with the exception of these last 8 months, where he suffered so greatly with his health, his last few years with Chris by his side were truly the most complete and happiest of his life overall from what I had seen. He told me a few months ago that I was wrong about that, and that his happiest moments were when we kids were born. But I'm certain that those were happy moments in an otherwise difficult season of life. I know, whether he wanted to admit it or not, that these last few years were the best, and that's okay that they were. Because for all the work, the sacrifice, the selflessness, and always putting other people ahead of himself for more than 50 years, he deserved to be happy and to have things for himself. Some people never get that, or never bothered to try and find it, but he did, and we all could learn a lot from his willingness to live life on his own terms, even if it took him a while to get there. Bill was an imperfect person like we all are. For as much as he would drive us crazy by having to poop every single time we ever had to leave the house to go anywhere, to haggling with sales clerks on the prices of everything. He would argue with people in Best Buy. Those prices are set. This was not a flea market. To being a genuine stickler for the rules on things that might have seemed inconsequential. Those are not the things that he will ultimately be remembered for. Instead, he'll be remembered for being a devoted father, a loving and loyal husband, and partner to both of his wives that he had in his life, an uncle who wanted to make a difference in the lives of his nieces and nephews, a slightly wacky grandparent who dressed funny and loved his grandchildren, a steady and consistent brother to his siblings, and a friend who would give the shirt off his own back to help others. At only 64, I'm sure we all feel like it isn't fair that he didn't have more time. However, it isn't up to us to decide how much time someone gets. God decided to call my father home, and while it may not feel like it, God's timing is perfect and intentional. He may be gone now, but I have to imagine that he was satisfied with the outcome. His kids all grew up and did okay. His grandkids are all happy and healthy and in good hands. And he built a community that will continue to thrive without him directly because of the work that he put in to build it. He also wouldn't want us to be sad. He would want us to eat, drink, and be merry and play pool. My father was a lover of music, and so I will leave you with a quote from one of his favorite artists. It's the one he listened to the most when I was little. I remember listening in the car quite a bit. Jimmy Buffett. And it comes from the song, He Went to Paris. He said, some of it's magic and some of it's tragic, but I had a good life all the way. I love you, Dad. Thank you, everybody.